Hello there. Sorry I'm a bit tired, but today we shall make another video. Also, bit of an early warning. I'm moving into my college dorm next week, so I may not make as many videos, if any. Apologies in advance. But anyways, time to talk about the myth of cultural equivalence, which I chose as a topic because for some reason my one discussing men and women in politics got a lot of attention. Now I'm going to jump on it, but for clarification, everything I say here I do believe. So I'm not going to overinflate things just because of attention. Theoretically, I could say all people of this group should be exterminated for attention. Do I believe that? No. So I'm not going to say that here other than as a reminder of the fact that I do not believe it. So, what do I mean by the myth of cultural equivalence? See, there's a lot of people who basically hold that cultures are equal to each other. Or at the bare minimum that we shouldn't complain about what someone does because it's cultural. For example, I'll use a minor one. We shouldn't complain about the fact that Americans eat a lot of fast food because that's just their culture. Or we shouldn't complain that Poles are very Christian because that's part of their culture. If we say believe those are bad things, it is very easy to just say, well, it's their culture, it's not a problem, don't worry about it. But the issue comes from the more extreme ends. For example, is Arab culture, I'm using this as a broad term, not necessarily an exact, because, fun fact, Arabs are diverse to some extent. They have similarities, certainly, but they are not the same. But is Arab culture equivalent to Western culture? Same thing here, using a broad definition of culture to include a lot of things to make a point. Is it equal? Is this the case? Well, let me ask you this. Is female genital mutilation okay? If you say no, then, well, that answers it right there. No, they are not equivalent. As a matter of fact, Arab culture holds several other beliefs that are distasteful for Western believers. Female genital mutilation is one of them. Another would be the fact that they consider women to have to be submissive, and often follow Sharia law because of it, where women's testimony is taken as less than the man's. Furthermore, stoning is a very real punishment for people that they don't like. In fact, it is such a problem in their culture that soldiers in the area, like from the US and other countries during the coalition, when we were during the War on Terror, were straight up ordered to not intervene because it's their culture and they didn't want to start a fight. Because of how common it was that they were actually worried their soldiers were going to start an international incident attacking civilians because they were stoning someone to death. Yeah. Oh, and little fun anecdote because my mom is female and was in the military. Guess what they also did? They would straight up require female soldiers to stay in vehicles and other enclosed areas when they were outside of base and cover up because of Arab traditions around women. Because they didn't want to start a massive argument between the Western women and the Arabs. They straight up had requirements restraining people from choosing their own dress in the desert because of cultural factors. That cannot be argued to be equal. And this is all ignoring actual effectiveness in terms of governance. It's easy to morally complain and just say, this is wrong, this is right. Here's the question. Does belief in certain ideas impact how society runs? Specifically, its efficiency. Yes, it does, actually. Societies which promote on time or organized and planned arrival do better than those that don't. This is because it's a lot easier to coordinate things. If I tell you, alright, be here by this time, you arrive and then you do what we need to do, that's a lot more efficient because it's making more use of the time we have on this planet to do things that need to be done. Simultaneously, those that have, shall we say, heavy emphasis put on face, or basically appearance, actually hurts societies, because what often happens is, because saving face is very important in such societies, those who diminish the face or look of others are seen as worse off and so are judged. This creates a very cautious society who isn't willing to call out its worst actors, because that would mean damaging their honor or their appearance. We actually see this quite heavily with the wars between Israel and its Arab neighbors. Not to get too political, or who am I kidding, I don't care. The 7-Day War was between Israel and 3 to 4 Arab countries. 4 if you include Palestine. In said war, they knocked Egypt all the way to the edge of the Sinai, pushed back Jordan out of the West Bank, Egypt out of Gaza as well, and Syria out of the Golan Heights. The Arabs, despite supposedly holding an equal culture, as some might say, got absolutely demolished by a smaller state with less people and less advancement. Keep in mind, both were getting financial support from outsiders. And they still got curb stomped in 7 days. And it was so bad that the people in charge kept denying who was at fault, saying it wasn't them, it was someone else. They kept shifting the blame. So did that fix their army? No. The reverse. It made it worse. Their armies have consistently gone down into basically party politics and worthless politicization, especially in Egypt, which is why they are so, shall I say, predisposed to military dictatorship. Kingdom doesn't work? Okay, overthrow them by the military, establish military strongman. Alright, let's try a republic. Maybe the people know what's going on. Nope, don't. Back to the military strongman. The fact is, the Arabs have demonstrated an exceptional failure in proper governance, even within their own states. Outside of oil money, they struggle. For example, Oman, not too bad tourism-wise, but it's still not exactly what you would call a very effective country, and it's known for human rights violations. Yemen? I shouldn't even need to explain, considering we are literally launching missiles at them because terrorists have taken control of part of their country. Iraq? Even before the US came in and steamrolled Hussein's government, it should be noted that he was regularly gassing civilians, or at the very least was shown capacity to do so, and he organized his armed forces specifically so he had a reserve designed to suppress the people, which was given the most attention. There's a reason the US rolled Iraq, and it was the civil war that came after that actually put the US on the back foot and struggling. The US may be strong. Certainly, it is a freaking powerful military machine once it gets working. But it has one notable factor that makes it much easier to clear anything in the Arab world. The Arabs are disorganized. They fight each other and blame each other rather than taking responsibility. In the West, if a general does something wrong, like let's say, even back in the 1950s with MacArthur, if a general does something wrong, people point to it and the president, or in the case that the president likes the general, someone else in the government, blames them and tries to pull back their role. With MacArthur, Truman straight up fired him, and he was considered a war hero. The fact is, the West has several advantages culturally compared to others. There's a reason homo-nationalism exists. I'm not even kidding. That's a thing. I don't get it, but it's a thing. The West, in its focus on individualism, organized dates and times and productivity resulted in massive improvements to the quality of life and societies around them. Their economies boomed, the ability for people to live better happened, and it was a steady improvement for everything besides, I don't know, maybe plants. But to be fair, I'd take some dead plants over being so bad at any level of organization or military planning that you get your butt kicked in 7 days despite having a larger army. I mean, seriously, that takes an impressive amount of completely garbage organization. Say what you will about the West. Believe me, we have plenty of problems. But our culture, I will never say is equivalent to Arab culture. Not once. Because it's a lie. I would not call the people who mangle their own women's genitalia and who treat them like second-class citizens as equal to us. Not once. I will not treat the people who stone people to death as equivalent to us. Not once. Nor will I treat their, let's face it, completely backwards approach of basically, we must save face and maintain our honor, when it's clear they don't know how to do that, and instead just shift the blame like a bunch of cowards. The fact is, the Arabs, I will never say they are culturally equivalent to the West. You can do this with any culture to any extent. For example, would you say the Aztecs were equivalent to the Spaniards? The people who regularly engaged in human sacrifices and flower wars to capture more human sacrifices? To the people who are so paranoid and defensive that when they see temples, they see mosques? Forgive me, but I think one's a bit worse than the other. Even if by a little. Don't get me wrong. The Spanish had a lot, and I do mean a lot of problems back then. And to some extent now, they still do. But, fact is, the Spaniards were not the ones sacrificing people to the freaking gods and butchering them. In fact, the Aztec actions of doing that in the Flower Wars was so bad that the Spanish straight up offered native allies the ability to seek revenge, and they took it by the dozens. Most of the massacres you hear about that happened to the Aztecs were done by fellow native tribes who were done with being enslaved and butchered. Cultures are different. They are diverse. And with that comes a simple fact. They can never be equal. I'd much rather take our society in the West, where women are viewed as human beings who are individuals capable of their own choices, than a world in which mistreating a woman is not only normal and accepted, but is freaking standard. Yeah, no. It is omnipresent there, and I would not say that is something that is good. The fact is, efficiency and results do not pan out for some cultures, especially when compared alongside others. Asian cultures, for example, are better than Arab ones. You could argue that they compete with the West. I would say they don't, considering, well, let's just say higher suicide rates does not indicate a good mental health statement. Furthermore, their general focus on face also hurts them quite significantly, to the point where people straight up have to put up signs saying, you can't do this thing, which is obviously not supposed to be done, simply so the employees have a reason to remove them from an area. That makes no sense. And so, yes, am I being Eurocentric right now? One could very much argue. I could also be very American-centric. Will not argue with that. Do not care if I am. Remind me who has shown the most results in history. Recent history, specifically. Oh, right, us. You may say, well, China did pretty good. Yeah, until they got their teeth kicked in by, let's see, the Mongols. Okay, they recovered. And then they got conquered by the Manchus, which they didn't consider Chinese for a long time. Oh, and then the Qing, after they adopted Chinese customs, got their teeth kicked in so hard by the British that everyone in Europe was looking at them like free real estate. Yeah, China does not have the best record with foreign peoples. Granted, they certainly got their revenge with Tibet and Xinjiang, but still. The fact is, cultures can never be equivalent because that requires cultures to be semi-uniform. Do cultures share lots of similar things? Quite a few of them do, especially when it comes to marriage, because being faithful is generally seen as a good thing. Not all. As a matter of fact, polygamy and concubinage is, or shall we say, a rather big problem in some cultures, especially in the Arab regions of Africa, or rather the Muslim regions. Because, let's face it, if you can use your holy book to justify having multiple wives, plenty of people are going to do it. And that they do. But the fact is, due to the differences in cultures, there is naturally a difference in outcomes. As such, we cannot say that these things are equal or equivalent. They are different, and therefore, some can be better than others. Furthermore, it is not wrong to say they should adopt the superior position, while the superior position should continue refining itself to be even better. Is there a perfect culture? I do not think there is. There will always be problems. But a culture can improve on itself, define itself to be more effective and efficient, more beneficial to the people who have it. And those who want to compete with it should either adopt some aspects of it or find ways to get around its problems while still growing in the areas that are important. And so, plain and simply, cultures should not be treated as equal, but they should not be, shall we say, genocided out. Now, should assimilation occur? Yes, absolutely. I will not deny that. But should a culture go out of its way to kill another? No, it should not. For the simple reason that it does not prove who is superior by just shooting people. Results speak for themselves more than a bullet will ever. And so, the one that's superior should show itself just by nature. Now, would I still argue that we should stop certain things that are obviously wrong, like, for example, stoning people to death? Yes. Female genital mutilation? Also yes. Marrying children? Oh, freaking heck yeah. I am more than fine to say, yeah, use force to stop that. In fact, I would argue do it immediately, without hesitation. But hey, that's just me. And so my end conclusion is this. Cultures are different. They cannot be equal. And they should refine themselves misspelled. While assimilating where possible. Have a good one.